In this episode of the Meeting of Minds podcast, it's just going to be me. I'm Philippa Robinson, and I'm the host of the Meeting of Minds podcast. This season, I'm going to be talking to some great people that I know about their experience of being in their 20s. The reason that I've chosen to do this for the first season is because I did a post on Instagram a little while ago, and I was using some information I found on the back of a book talking about decades of being in your 20s, 30s, 40s and 50s. And I did a series of little videos talking about those 4 decades. When I did the video about the 20s, I had a lot of response from the people that I know, and they told me that what I'd said had really resonated with them. So the bit off the back of the book that I used as the basis for my little Instagram video was saying that the point of your 20s is to try on life's uniforms. And the idea being that you might change careers, maybe change places that you live, just try out a few different ways of being, perhaps. And that really resonated with people. And what I was trying to get across is, don't worry if you haven't got it sorted. Don't worry if you try something and that then doesn't really seem to be the thing for you and you try something else. And I seem to have really struck a chord when I talked about the 20s. So that's why I decided to recruit some of the fabulous people that I know in their 20s to talk about their experience. And that is what the next episodes of this series are going to be. But for this very first episode, I thought I would speak very briefly, although I'm not good at speaking briefly, but talking about my experience of my 20s. And I was at university from 18 to 21. I was doing a law degree. So I started my 20s, early 20s, having just graduated. I then took 8 months off before I started my training contract. So I've graduated from university and then I went to law school for a year, which was really tough. Toughest 10 months even of my life, really. An awful lot of information to learn. Although I hated my law degree. It wasn't what I was expecting at all. It wasn't practical. There was a lot of research. Yeah, I really didn't like my law degree, but law school I much preferred. It was much more practical, hands-on. I could imagine using some of that information. But actually, all in all, I was writing the other day about being a lawyer and how, law school, law degree really can't teach you what it's like to be a lawyer. And if I had taken my experience of my law degree as an example of how I would be as a lawyer, I would not have carried on. And actually, I was a good lawyer. So I am glad that I didn't sort of take my experience of doing my law degree, which I didn't like. I got a 2-2, which is okay. Of course it is. But I did actually try quite hard. So, but I did carry on. I went to law school, did better there, and then got a job in a big corporate law firm in London. Went there and did my training contract for 2 years. And I stayed in the law until 2011. So I, had 20 odd years under my belt by the time I finished. And, it was a good career to me, I guess. So I've sort of fast forwarded a bit there. As I left law school, I then took 8 months off before I started my training contract in London. So I worked for 4 months and then I went to Australia for 4 months to travel around. I decided to work first and then just travel in Australia. And I planned this for ages, and I bought my ticket, and I had no real plan. I had a vague idea of where I wanted to go. I'd got 2 internal flights booked, but all the rest was just going to be travelling around ad hoc. And I got on the plane which was going to land in Perth, and it was only as I landed in Perth very early, like 2 o'clock in the morning, having been on a plane for the best part of 30 hours, really tired. And then I had a bit of a panic because I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I was going to go. I'd heard it would be easy, but I had no idea. I got in a bit of a panic, but actually it was okay. It was quite easy in those days to find somewhere to stay. So I found a board with all the backpackers hostels on them. There was a number you could call. I found a minibus that would drop me off at the door, which I did. I was then led to a bed in a room where I just collapsed. And by the time I surfaced the next day, everybody else who'd been asleep in the room had got up and gone out, and I hadn't heard a word of it. And I soon settled in, and I travelled around Australia for 4 months, had a great time. And I was writing about it the other day and realised that actually I think during that time I learnt I could get myself out, or I could rely on myself to look after myself, to get me places, to organise things. And I think I learned, if I hadn't done before, I think definitely during that trip I learned not to be too afraid of things. And it's only as I've been writing about this lately that it's really occurred to me that trip to Australia probably did me so much more good than I've ever really given it credit for. So yeah, it's interesting, but I was very lucky. I did that, came back, started my job in London. So funny, because in those days, as a trainee solicitor in London in 1992, we were all the girls were taken to one side and told that we were not allowed to wear trousers. That is hilarious, isn't it? To think that you couldn't wear trousers in a corporate law firm. And that was only in 1992. It wasn't, I suppose that's quite a long time ago now, 28 years ago, but still, I remember thinking it was quite amusing at the time. But, that's what it was. That was the rules. That's what we did. So we duly didn't wear trousers. And I also remember one of the partners in the firm having to go into his office one day and ask him for something. I can't remember what. And he just looked me up and down and said, "Oh, not only do we have women, we have northern women now, do we?" And I just didn't know where to put myself. I could have, I just wanted the ground to open up and swallow me up right there and then. So, yeah, that wasn't a great introduction to working in a law firm. It was quite early on, actually. And what it did was amplify for me a feeling that I had ever since leaving home at 18. In fact, before then, really. And it was a feeling that has seeped into the very essence of who I am over the years. And that is not fitting in. So all the way through university, I tried to fit in, and to varying degrees of success. And I made some fabulous friends, some people who I am still friends with now. But on the whole, I spent a lot of time trying to fit in. Same at law school. And then I go and start work in London. I answer an ad for a job, a flat share. 3 girls who already know each other want a fourth to share the flat, and I answer the ad. And I then was trying to fit in with them. Although, to be fair, that was a really lucky a chance thing that happened, because we all got on great and they really taught me how to drink, which was quite... we had a good time anyway, let's put it that way. But I definitely felt the need to try and fit in with them. And then at work, I began to realise, being a woman and a northern woman, I was in a minority, and I really had to work hard at feeling that I had a place there. So it was quite a battle, my 20s, actually. And I stayed in London for 3 years. Then I moved to Bristol for a year. Then I moved up to Manchester. Then I moved back to London. Then I moved back to the northwest. I moved all over the place in my 20s. I carried on being a lawyer. I always found it really easy to get a job every time I moved cities. So that's why I kept on doing it, because I found it easy to get a job. And I moved back to Bristol in 2000, the end of 2001, very beginning of 2001. And I was 32 by then. So I'd spent the whole of my 20s really moving around, being a lawyer, but moving around and moving places that I lived. Even when I was in Bristol for a year, I lived in 2 different flats, 6 months here and 6 months there. So I did a lot of moving around, trying to fit in. Really, looking back, I suppose that I can see now that I was looking for something, looking for a place to fit in, looking for some roots or some stability, perhaps. And it would be a long time before I actually found what I was looking for, largely because I didn't know what it was I was looking for. But I did eventually find it, but not till about 4 years ago. So I was searching for that for a long, long time. So that was my 20s, really. And I did have a great time, don't get me wrong. I did a lot of partying. I had, certainly the years I lived in London, had a great time. It's been brilliant to be older and look back on that time and know that I had that great time. I don't feel like I'm missing out now by not being out partying. And I can see it now for the time that I felt it. At that time, I felt like I didn't really fit in. But also, I think I thought everybody else did fit in, and that's probably not the case. I do think, actually, if I'd opened my mouth and said any of that to some of my friends, I'm pretty sure I would have got the answer back that they felt quite similar. But I didn't know that, and I didn't say anything. And I enjoyed it, but found it tough at the same time. I think it gave me great experiences, but also still a feeling of longing for something else. And so whilst my career was pretty sorted through that time, the rest of my life wasn't. And that was where I was trying uniforms on during my 20s. Uniforms for life, really. Uniforms for trying to fit in socially. Where did I want to be? What was my life going to look like? Those bigger questions, really. And I did struggle. I really did. And I think if I'd known that probably other people were struggling at the same time, it would have made me feel less alone. And that is the reason why I am doing this podcast, or certainly this series of the podcast, because I want people to know that things they are going through, in the things they're going through, they are not alone. And whilst even if they don't know somebody else who is going through it, there are people elsewhere who are going through things. And hopefully, by having some conversations with great people who are open and honest about their experiences, I can bring some normality for people for some of the things that they are feeling and going through. So that is a little bit more about me, my 20s, and a bit more about this podcast. And at the end of every episode, I ask my guests whether they have a little motto or a saying that they find helps them in life. And my one thing that I say all the time is that every day is a school day. And by that, I mean, keep on learning, every day, learn something new if you can, and don't ever think that that is it. You know what you know, and there's going to be nothing else. And also know that you're never done, and there is always more to learn. So that's what that means. Another saying I really like, because quite a few people are going to have two. I'm going to have two as well. And my other one is, I have a postcard on my wall that a dear friend sent to me years ago, and it says, "The only risk in life is to take no risk at all." And I have kept that in mind a lot over the years to try and help me find courage to take risks at times when I have not felt that courageous. And the risks that I have taken have largely been successful, and even if they didn't appear to be successful at the time, they have led to great things. So even though the success that comes from those taking risks might not look like the success you would expect to find from that risk taking, it is as a result of a certain decision, a certain path taken, that some great things have happened, and would never have happened if I hadn't been prepared to take that risk. So I do use that saying quite a lot as well. And if either of those are useful to anyone who is listening, then please take them and use them as you need them. Okay, so that is it for me. The next episode will be in conversation with a guest that will drop in a few days. I hope you've enjoyed listening today, and I know you're going to love some of the fabulous conversations that I've got coming. So please subscribe. Please tell your friends, ask them to subscribe. And if you have a moment, I'd be really grateful if you could rate and review. Perhaps you won't be able to do that after just listening to this one episode, but maybe in a couple of episodes' time, if you like it, you can leave a rating and a review, because it will help other people find this podcast and help them also benefit from the empowerment and the positivity that I'm hoping to bring to people with this podcast. So thank you for listening, and that is all for today. Take care.